Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped and welcome to Japan. That in the distance is Mount Fuji. Sadly, Fuji-san is shrouded by clouds today and is not putting in an appearance, maybe a bit later on in the day. And that is the all-new Nissan Ariya NISMO. Now, I've come to Japan to be one of the first people outside of Nismo to drive their new spin on the Ariya, and I'm really excited to see what it's like. I did experience one at the Tokyo E-Prix earlier this year as a passenger during a hot lap around the Formula E circuit, and I know Ariya well, having ran the two-wheel drive variant as a Hendy Group long-termer. A car that impressed, but it really didn't have the performance or the kind of driver-oriented characteristics that I look for in a car. But by all accounts, the guys at Nismo have done exactly that to that car. More power, more handling, more driver focus. So if you're not familiar with Nismo, Nismo is the kind of motorsport and tuning wing of Nissan, originally a separate company, now part of the Nissan family. And they have this Nismo branding, this Nismo treatment that they do to cars, much like BMW M, Audi Sport, the same kind of vibe. And they're actually 40 years old this year. Now, in the UK market, you may well know them. They did a Nismo Duke, they've done a Nismo GTR, and they did a Nismo Z, which is a car that I absolutely adore, but sadly we don't get in Europe. I actually drove one of those yesterday. But now they're coming back. They haven't had a Nismo car in the UK market for a little while, so they're coming back with this car. This car will start deliveries in the UK in the new year, so we're getting a super early look at it. So let me walk you around the car and talk through some of the differences between this and a standard Ariya. Now, first up, the standard Ariya is available in a two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive variant. The four-wheel drive variant being Nissan's e-Force four-wheel drive system, which I drove in Finland earlier this year. So the Nismo variant, no surprise, they've used the e-Force four-wheel drive platform to build on. They've not changed the motors or the battery pack, so it still has an 87 kilowatt hour battery pack. What they've done is they've changed the tuning of the motors and the power delivery from the motors, and they've increased the horsepower now to 429 horsepower. So a significant power lift from the top spec e-Force Ariya. Now, you might be thinking straight away, what they could have gone more than that. I mean, if you look at this car's natural competitors, something like a Tesla Model 3 or Model Y Performance, or maybe something like the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, they're way more power. Even the Kia EV6 GT, they're up at like 600 horsepower. So you don't look at this car just based on numbers. If you did, I think you'd dismiss it quite quickly. I mean, let's face it, 420 odd horsepower is still a huge amount. The torque figure is still the same at 600 Newton meters. That hasn't changed, but what has changed is how that power and torque come in to really change the driving characteristics of the car. The other thing that's changed on this car is the exterior styling, and there's been a lot of work done on aero. So let's start at the front. Still the very distinctive front end of the Ariya, but obvious differences. You've got this little chin spoiler here with Nismo branding and red pipework. But the aero work starts as you come round the side. You've got a couple of things here. You've got this little kind of canard that sits on the side, and that creates a vortex that goes down the side of the car, and then you've got these little curtain entrances here, and that provides an air curtain down the side. So the purpose is to reduce lift. I mean, you might call it downforce. My argument, I guess, would be really who buys a car of this category looking for downforce? But it's all about high-speed stability and reducing lift. And the aero work that's been done on the car has reduced lift by something like 40% compared with a standard Ariya. And it starts at the front of the car, but the really cool thing is it's not changed the drag coefficient. So it's still a slippy through the air, but just with less lift, which is a tricky thing to do. Normally when you increase downforce on a car, that makes the car a lot more draggy. So these skirts produce a flow of air down the side of the car, and the rear of the car has some really nice kicks and flicks. Round the back, much more obvious aero work. I love the two little shark fin antennas there, but then you've got this top wing or spoiler that's basically designed to direct airflow along the rear windscreen onto this little lip spoiler here, and then manage the airflow off the back of the car. So as well as doing a lot of aero work, I just think it looks fantastic. And then down here, we've got a quite aggressive diffuser, certainly in terms of styling, but again, that's managing airflow underneath the car. So aerodynamics, very, very important in the car. Now there's also a little bit more aero work down here, so the side sills are different from the standard Ariya as well. Next up, big change is, I'm very pleased to see a lovely sticky set of Michelin Pilot Sport EV tyres. Now these tyres have been specifically designed in conjunction between Michelin and Nissan for this car. They're not OEM marked, but they do have a specific serial number to tie them in with this car. And what they're aimed at doing is basically providing a much more grippy traction for both handling and also acceleration. So the standard Ariya has more eco-efficiency oriented tyres. So they've gone, and now we've got a nice set of sticky Pilot Sport EVs. The other thing is these wheels and the way the thin spokes work on the wheels, that's really designed to try and help with cooling of brakes, to get air out of the wheel well and out from inside the wheel and tyre setup. But they should change the handling characteristics of this car a great deal. Now, if you've been tuning into the channel this year, you will probably know that I've been working with Nissan around Formula E. I came to the Tokyo E-Prix, I went to London, and one of the big things that Nissan are, or the reason, if you like, they're in Formula E, is the development and then trickle-down technology into their road car program. And Nismo are the motor racing wing of Nissan and responsible for the Formula E team. And there's lots of the findings that they are getting from Formula E that have trickled down into this car. Some of it is from the tyres, the way in which the mapping of power and torque delivery is done. So you can start to see that development of road car tech from their racing program. The other things, though, that Nismo have done with this car, because so far, okay, it's increased the power a little bit, the power delivery's changed, it's got stickier tyres and a bit more aero, but it's got fundamentally different suspension systems. So it's got different spring rates, so 3% stiffer at the front, 10% stiffer at the back, different dampers, so that's going to give the car completely different feel. The steering, so it's got electronically assisted power steering, but the power assistance has changed completely. It's a much lighter steering at slow speeds, and even as you go up through an increase up through the speed range, the steering is still lighter than the standard car and has more feel by all accounts. We need to put that one to the test. So from the outside, yes, there's some styling changes, but I think it's going to be very much a case with this car. The sum of all those parts will give a really dynamic feel. The last thing to mention, and again, I might talk about this more when we're driving this afternoon, is the e-Force four-wheel drive system that distributes power and torque amongst the four wheels. That's also been tuned to help with turning, to help with balance in the corners, to help with power on exit, so that extra power, the 420 odd horsepower that we now have, is there and usable. And we quizzed the guys from Nismo yesterday, and one of the questions was, why didn't you give it more power? Why didn't you kind of go silly and have 600 horsepower? And the answer was, well, firstly, it's a performance car that's really aimed at the road, not at track. It's not that you can't drive one of these on track, but it's trying to give a sporty feel, more performance, but road car performance that you can really tap into on the public highway without going silly. So the next thing we're going to do is have a quick jump inside and show you some of the styling changes on the inside, and then there are some insane roads in this area. We're in an area about an hour and a half outside of Yokohama called Hakone, and it is beautiful for a start, drop dead gorgeous, but the roads, oh, they're amazing. But let me just show you inside and then we'll go for a drive. Now, first up in here, standard Ariya really. However, the trim and the choice of materials is just stepped up quite a notch. One of the things I like about Nismo when they do a car, they just have this really cool way of styling it out. So you've got suede or an Alcantara effect material on the dash, red stitching, this lovely red anodized detailing, a little Nismo badge just here, and then you've got the kind of fake wood trim that you get in Ariya, which is really nice. These seats look very cool, very comfortable. Again, suede, so they're supportive, but they're not overly sporty, so they don't dig into you, but you don't feel like you're going to be going anywhere. And then a specific to Nismo steering wheel with a red 12 o'clock stripe. All very nice. Other changes, there are now 4 drive modes in this car. So you've got Eco and Snow Mode, which are exactly the same as they are in standard Ariya. Even the mapping of the power is exactly the same. It's not changed at all. But then there's a Sport Mode and a Nismo Mode. And both of those have a different tune and a different throttle mapping and so on to the standard car. Well, the standard car doesn't have Nismo Mode at all. So to step through those, I think we go for a bit of a drive. But the first impressions of the car, it's a really nice place to be. I think externally there are 4 colours that you can choose from, all of them really nice. They do a beautiful dark blue, which looks fantastic, especially with the red contrast piping that is the hallmark of Nismo. But yeah, let's get some cameras up and go for a drive, because I have a feeling that on the roads around here, this car is going to be pretty special. So we'll start our drive. We've got about an hour and a half loop that includes some really nice roads, but I thought I'd just start off in the standard mode. Now, I think I said earlier on in the video that there's the Eco and Snow Mode, which are the same as standard Ariya, and then I think I said there was Sport and Nismo. I was wrong. It's standard and Nismo. So I'm in standard at the moment, and one of the really nice displays on the dash is a torque distribution display, so you can basically see both on throttle and on regen where the torque's going. I'm also in E pedal mode and B, so I've got the maximum regenerative braking, and it's really quite aggressive, to the point where on a road like this, when you're driving along at normal speeds, you don't really need to use the brake at all. While we're talking about brakes, the interesting thing I found out during the technical briefings yesterday is I assumed that with the increase in performance and all that kind of stuff, they'd have a bigger brake kit, but they don't. They haven't really done a great deal to the brakes at all. So we'll see how they perform. On the road, I don't think that's a problem, but when we were on track at the E-Prix, the brakes did get quite hot. In fact, the professional driver I was with set fire to them. We won't be doing that today. But in this standard setting, even though the power delivery, both power and torque curves, are very, very different to standard Ariya, it doesn't feel a great amount different. The main difference from remembering back to when I drove the Ariya as a long-termer, that was the lower powered 2-wheel drive model. This has a huge amount more go when you push the throttle down. But at the moment, we've got a very slow moped in front of us. So let's go and find some twisty roads and give it a bit of Yahoo. And then we'll put it up into Nismo mode. And one of the things in Nismo mode that unfortunately is only in Japanese spec cars, we're not going to get it in the UK, is an on-throttle noise, which is derived from the Formula E car, actually, and an off-throttle noise, so when you go into regen braking. And we don't get that in the UK, and it's such a shame, because actually I think it sounds quite good. Let's see what this car can do. I'm going to put it actually into Nismo mode. Let's face it, we're in a Nismo. So first things first, I'm now driving a spaceship. So you've got all of the kind of auditory tunings of a Formula E car. Now, this noise isn't coming to the UK, as I've mentioned, and it may well be that after this drive, I'm glad it isn't. First impressions, off the line, the initial bit of acceleration in this car, it's quick. It does 0 to 60 in around about 5 seconds. Not that much faster than the E-Force Ariya. But the way that they've tuned the motor, it's all about the mid-range punch, that kind of 80 kilometers to 120 kilometers. By all accounts, it will do 80 to 120 faster than a GTR. The brake pedal isn't the best. It's got a very long travel before anything happens. So in normal driving, it's got quite good mid-corner manners though. Oh, this is turning into a very nice bit of road. It's quite stable through the higher speed stuff. It's 2.2 tons. Now the interesting thing is there's no weight saving at all between this and the standard Ariya. In fact, this is a little bit heavier by about 10 kilos, which again, I don't really understand. You would have thought if you're going to do a sporty version, you drop some weight. But there's slightly different tyres which are a bit heavier, but that is accounted for by a lighter wheel. So unsprung mass doesn't really change a great deal. There's all of the aero kicks and flicks on the car, which I'm sure add a little bit of weight, but it's not any lighter. And it is quite difficult to disguise 2.2 tons. That said, mid-corner, it does feel nice and stable and competent. The brake pedal needs a lot of work. The first time you put your foot on it, it feels like the brake's gone soft, like it would do on a track day. It doesn't really do anything, and then it slowly bites up and you get a bit more of a feel. The higher the speed you go, the less effective the regenerative braking is on retarding the car. It's doing a great job of putting energy back into the battery pack. That's a lovely long radius corner. I tell you what, I can see why they've sent us up here. What a bit of road this is. See that? What am I doing there? That's some miles an hour over the speed limit, and it's doing that very competently indeed. So I'm not sure about the sound. I think it's a shame it's not coming to the UK. I think they need a different sound. I don't think, if I just go back into standard mode, the sound goes away and you get that kind of super quiet EV feeling. And I just look at what the likes of Hyundai have done with Ioniq 5N and that artificial sound. And I know it's artificial, but it just gives a little bit more interest. And it, you know, at the end of the day, petrol heads like me, we're always going to miss having, I'm going to go here. Oh, he's going to let me past. It's very kind of him. So yeah, in standard mode, it doesn't feel a lot slower, to be honest. The throttle mapping is different. The delivery is different. You just don't get all of the spaceship noises. What you do start to hear is a little bit more of the road noise from the tyres. Now, the range is still being calculated. The WLTP measurements are still being done. They expect the range to be around about 10% less than the same battery pack size Nissan Ariya e-Force, and that's to do with the tyres, because the tyres are stickier to help me go around corners quicker. They've got slightly more rolling resistance, and they're going to have an adverse effect on range. But to be fair, 10% isn't a great deal, and I'd rather sacrifice that for the amount of grip I'm getting. What a road this is. It's a very confidence-inspiring car. The mid-range punch is really nice, so as you come off throttle, when you're on the apex and you want to come out the corner, you can really sort of play with the car and just balance the car. You've got that instant torque delivery, which is the nice thing about having an EV. But I tell you what, people, as we come up behind a slower car, you need to come to Japan and do some driving, because the roads are sensational. I've got to say, this car does put a smile on your face. Final impressions of it. Well, we've driven it quite a lot today, and first things first is it is a very competent car at higher speeds. The first thing is, though, I think primarily it's a everyday family car that if you want to have a bit of fun on your way home from work, it's there for you to do it. The suspension setup's very competent. The car's got a lot of mass, I've mentioned that already, but in these higher speed corners, it's a real confidence-inspiring car. However, when you are going quite quickly, if it gets unsettled by a bump, it's just a little bit of a, you know, moment, because you just start to feel that mass take over. In terms of power, I quite like the way that they've delivered the power and the torque. It's a miles faster car, or certainly feels it, than standard Ariya. It's not one of these super ballistic EVs that does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds like a Model Y Performance or Model 3 Performance or EV6 GT, but it's plenty fast enough for the public highway. The disappointment for me is the braking. The brake pedal has a real long travel to it, and even just going up and down this lovely turnpike road, there have been a couple of occasions where we've overworked the brakes and you get a nice smell of brake pad, and it just doesn't seem to want to retard the car, and that's a shame. I think a bigger set of brake discs and pads would have been a good idea. But all in all, I really like the styling on the outside. I like the Nismo touches on the inside. I've always been a fan of the inside of the Ariya, and I know I haven't done so much about the infotainment system, about the room in the back, the size of the boot. That's all on my standard Living with Ariya video. I'll put a link above, you can go off and watch that. This video was really all about what Nismo have done to Ariya, just to turn the wick up a little bit and make it more of a driver's car. And I think they've certainly done that. As I said, I think the weakness it will have in the UK market, especially anybody who's driven Ioniq 5N or approaches this car at the same level as Ioniq 5N, it's a little bit more of a grown-up car, I think. The modifications, the tuning tweaks have been made, they're done so to make it a mature and competent quick road car, and they've done that. It's not a drifting 0 to 60 launch control off of a set of traffic lights kind of car. But in a way, isn't that what all cars are meant to be? How many times do you really need to do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds? You have one of these high performance EVs, you do that 2 or 3 times and it gets boring. What you want is mid-range punch, and this car delivers plenty of that. What you want is cornering confidence, and this car delivers plenty of that. And with a slight tweak to the brakes, I think it would be an all-round complete package. So I can't wait for this car to come to the UK, and I can't wait to get my hands on one. This guy's letting me past. But put in the comments below what you think of the Ariya NISMO. This guy's letting me past. I think they quite like seeing these Nismo cars out on the road here in Japan. But yeah, put in the comments what you think of Ariya NISMO. Is it a car that would tempt you to electric, the extra sporty tweaks and sporty add-ons? But if you enjoyed that, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film. I'm not quite so sure that the road's going to be as good as that one. And if anybody spotted the slight continuity error with me changing colour of car from grey to blue, well done. I'll see you on the next film. Take care, guys. Drive safe.